Hi guys, welcome to my channel. My name is Simone. Thank you so much for stopping by. Thank you for joining me. If you are new here, please take a moment to subscribe to my channel. I would greatly appreciate it.
Open up, you OPN, bitch, you won't BBM.
So, in today's video, I'm gonna be talking about how I was able to change my career at the age of 30. That's right, 30 years old. And actually, the journey to a career change at the age of 30 started 3 years prior. It's a long story. I'm gonna try to make it as short as possible, but I do want to get into the most important details. And this story, this very moment that I decided that I was gonna change my life's journey, my career path, it was so pivotal. It changed my entire life. It was just such an important point in my life. So let's backtrack. I was actually at home in my basement doing laundry, and we were getting ready to go to Jamaica for Christmas. So I was doing laundry, getting ready to pack, and my phone rang, and it was my boss. So I answered the phone, and she said, she's very frank. She's to the T. She doesn't mince her words, and she says it like she means it. So she called and she said, "Simone, what are you doing with your life?" Now, time out. I graduated college in 2007. If you were a graduate around this time, you know that we were in the middle of a recession. It was super hard for college students to get jobs. I mean, it was hard for seasoned people who were newly unemployed to get jobs. So we as college graduates were competing with well-experienced employees, and it was just so hard to get a job. I made a few mistakes in college. I'm gonna be the first to admit it. I know for sure that I wasn't as focused as I should have been while going through college, and I missed that opportunity. It's not something that I can go back and change, but I do recognize that I didn't do my best when I was in undergrad. Moving forward, when I graduated, I did not get a position in my field. As a matter of fact, I was working part-time throughout college as a dental assistant in Manhattan. And towards the end of college, I started to looking for jobs, and that's another mistake that I made. I think I started way too late to job search. But anyhow, I wasn't able to get a job in my field. So one of my very, very close friends now, I met her in college, and she told me about a position. And again, it wasn't in my field, but yeah, I was a new graduate. So she told me about a position at a private school. It was an administrative position. So I interviewed for the position and I got the position. I had been working at this job for quite some time. I started there in 2007. I was working for about 3 years. And I guess I have to come back and give another story time about why I left that job and why I went back. But anyways, I was there for 3 years. I left for about 1.5 years. And just a little hint, I actually was engaged when I started the position, so I got married, and my husband was living in Canada at the time, so I moved to Canada briefly. But I'll tell you about that story on another on another video. Anyhow, when I came back to New York, I went back to my old job, and fast forward to this day in my basement, packing, doing laundry, and getting ready to go on vacation at Christmas time. So my boss, she said, "Simone, what are you doing with your life?" Again, I was working in an administrative position at a school. I really didn't have a career path there because I didn't want to be a teacher. And I shout out to all the teachers, especially now more than ever, I realize how important their services are because I have to homeschool my kids. Well, actually help with homeschooling them. But again, I didn't have a career path there. I wouldn't be able to move up, and I didn't want to go into teaching. So she was just like, what are you doing? Are you going back to school? Are you gonna grow your family? And at the time I had my first son. So after that conversation, I dig deep into my mind, and I always knew that I was going to go back to school to get my master's degree because I wanted to further my career. But until that moment, I hadn't put like a lot of thought into it. And so I was just like, okay, I'm going to Jamaica. I'm going to take this time to spend with my family, to enjoy my family, to enjoy my beautiful island of Jamaica. And then I'm gonna get to work when I get back. So this is December. As soon as I got back, I started like thinking about my next move. I wanted a career that I loved. I wanted a career that I would be in a position of service. I wanted a position that I could give back to my community. I'm an avid giver. Like, no matter how small or big it is, even if it's not monetary, there is always a way that we can give. And so I wanted my career to reflect my heart's desire. I wanted something that wasn't just to serve me and my family, but to serve a greater community at large. And so I stumbled upon healthcare. When I think about healthcare, the first thing you think about are clinicians, you think about nurses, doctors, and all the people that are on the front line. And I don't know, I'm good at math, I'm good at language arts and things like that, but I just didn't feel like science was my strong suit. And so I didn't want to be a clinician in any way, shape, or form, but I still wanted to go into healthcare. So I decided to pursue a degree in healthcare management, which is the administrative side of healthcare. Behind the nurses and the doctors, there is an army of administrators making sure that healthcare facilities run smoothly. And that is a path that I wanted to take. So I decided on a career in healthcare management. I started to research schools that I would be able to complete my degree, my master's degree. And I found a school that I would be able to take courses online and in person, like on site. And so at the time, this was 2013, and online learning, I don't want to say it was a new thing, but it was fairly new. And I did have some concerns because I didn't want to have to put on my resume that I attended an online program, because again, it was a fairly new concept. Like, at least to me, it wasn't that well known. And so I read online that you should choose a college where they have like online learning and also in-person learning, so that you didn't have to specify on your resume whether you attended online or in person. Anywho, I did some courses, like I want to say the foundation courses I did on campus, but a majority of my classes were taken online. And again, at the time, I had a toddler. I want to say my son was 2 or 3 years old, and I was working full time, and I had a really crazy commute. It took me 2 hours to get to my job in the morning and 2 hours to get home in the evening. So my commute was really, really crazy. That's 4 hours out of my day every single day. So basically for 2 years, all of my weekends were dedicated to getting my work done. As I said, I worked throughout my entire master's degree, and I had a baby in tote, a toddler. I remember feeling so guilty. I remember feeling like, you know, I'm here studying, I'm here doing my tests, and I'm also neglecting my son. The good thing, and I don't regret it at all, like it absolutely changed my life forever. I have no regrets. But the good thing about doing it at that time is he has no recollection of that. He has no recollection of wanting to play with mommy, but mommy was cooped up, trying to get her work done, trying to write papers, trying to submit assignments, trying to comment on other classmates' work, trying to collaborate on projects and things like that. It was still the absolutely best decision I made in terms of my career. Fast forward to 2014. I did classes throughout the summer, so I was technically able to complete my degree in a year and a half. I actually started in spring of 2013. So actually when my boss called me was December of 2012. So spring 2013, I started classes and I finished my last class, which was a capstone course, in December of 2014. And let me tell you, I am so happy. Like the first semester that I took, I actually did 2 courses, and as a full-time master's student, you should really be doing 3 courses. So my last semester, I had that 1 class left over, and it was a capstone course, so it was super hard. But I'm so happy that I only had 1 course because baby number 2 was on the way. So here we are, working full-time, having a baby running around 2-3-year-old, and another baby on the way. So December, I finished my last course. I was so happy. Graduation happens once a year. So even though I finished my last course in December of 2014, I actually graduated the following year. I want to say June or July of 2015. Again, it was really hard. I just had a lot going on at the time, but again, it was the absolute best decision that I made. So fast forward to 2015. 2015 was a very, very big year for me. And I don't know if I'll have another year like 2015. But in 2015, I had my son in February. Why did it take me a moment to figure that out? But anywho, finished classes in December, had my son in February 2015. When I left the office, when I worked my last day, I was actually supposed to work another week in January, like to the end of January, but I wasn't able to do it. If you live in New York City, you know how brutal the subways can be. And I was traveling on the subway twice a day with my big old belly for 2 hours. So I basically decided to stop working a little bit early. I just got to a point where I couldn't do it anymore. So I stopped working, and 3 weeks later, I had my son. Fast forward to April of 2015, I actually turned 30. And then in the summer of 2015, I graduated. So had the baby in February, turned 30 in April, and then in May, I actually started a volunteer program at New York Presbyterian. If you are a New Yorker, you know that New York Presbyterian is one of the top, I want to say the #1 hospital in New York City. And I wanted to volunteer because healthcare administration, healthcare management was a new field for me. I had no experience in healthcare, but I did have an administrative background, so I felt like I had transfer skills that I'd be able to apply in whatever position I took on. So in order to kind of get my feet wet in healthcare, I started to volunteer at New York Presbyterian. So I started volunteering in May, and I graduated in the summer, And throughout the summer, I was volunteering twice a week from 10 to 2 or something like that. I was pretty much home for a good portion of 2015, only because I wanted to spend time with my son, and I also knew that I wanted to work on changing careers from education to healthcare. Working in a school, I feel like my mind is programmed to basically start afresh every September, because you know September is the beginning of a new school year. That is really, or a new year when you're in the field of education. And so I want to say when August rolled around and it started to get a little bit cooler, I was just like, okay, fall is near. After fall, then comes December. And I don't know about you, but whenever it's cold, if my life is not in order, it's just like the saddest thing. I have to have my life on track, especially in the cold season, because I feel like that's a recipe for disaster and depression. Anyhow, once the season started to change, I want to say at the end of August, I just started thinking about my next move. And again, during this whole time that I was home, I was still applying for positions in healthcare, but nothing was really panning out. I mean, I signed up with a staffing agency. I was sending out resumes every day to different healthcare positions while volunteering at York Presbyterian. And so when September rolled around, at that point I had enrolled with the staffing agency, and I was just like talking to her about my career goals, and she was a recruiter specifically for healthcare. And she told me that she was recruiting for 2 hospitals in New York City. One was my dream company, my dream hospital, and the other was New York Presbyterian. And I was like, this is great. This is absolutely great. All this time, I had been applying to my dream hospital for years. I had been applying, and as a matter of fact, I had interviewed with them in 2014, but I did not get the position. And so I'm just not thinking anything about it. I was just like, I'll just continue applying, and whenever I get a job, I get a job, but I'm also going to be looking at different healthcare facilities as well. I was really excited to work with this staffing agency. I thought it was promising, and the recruiter was amazing. So this story is so funny to me, but I just feel like whenever it's your time, it's your time. I, worked with a recruiter. She scheduled me for an interview for a temporary position. That's the thing. When you work through staffing agencies, you usually get temp positions, and I was willing to do a temporary position so that I could expand my experience in healthcare. So she told me about an administrative position at my dream hospital. I'm not going to say the name because that's where I work. But yeah, so she told me that she was going to set up an interview for that hospital. And she did. She called me, she gave me the date, the time, the person that I'd be interviewing with, and a little bit of detail about the position. And it was an administrative position, which was fine with me because that was where my strong suit was. We are now in September, and lo and behold, I am looking forward to my interview through the staffing agency, and I get an email directly from that hospital. I'm gonna call it Hospital Amazing. No, I'm just kidding. I'm not gonna call it Hospital Amazing. But I got an email from the hospital, directly from the hospital, not through the staffing agency. I got an email from a recruiter saying that they would like to move forward with my application. The first thing they told me was to move forward with my application and I needed to do an assessment online. Now, I had done assessments so many times that I don't even remember applying for the position because I had applied to so many positions and I just never did the assessment that was a requirement for that position. So I got an email, in order to move forward, please complete this assessment. I did the assessment right away. So I got an email saying that they would like to schedule an in-person interview. And I was like, great. When they sent me the interview date and time, it was the same day that I was supposed to interview with someone else at the hospital, but through the staffing agency. And the interview times were like an hour apart. I started to panic because I was like, this is great. I have more than one options, but this is not gonna work. There's no way I'm gonna be able to interview for the position through the staffing agency and make the interview directly with the hospital. And this is a huge hospital. They have many sites in the city and throughout the New York City area. So I was just in a panic. I didn't know what to do. So I decided that I was gonna reach out to the recruiter working directly at the hospital and ask her to push the time back. And that gave me about 3 hours in between interview 1 and interview 2. Again, interview 1 is through the staffing agency and interview 2 is directly with the hospital. So that would be a permanent position with the hospital. Anywho, I prepped, I prayed, I did everything that I was supposed to do, and I went on my merry way. This is towards the end of September 2015. I went in to the HR location and I interviewed for the position through the staffing agency. The interview went well. The recruiter was great. I left and I went to a nearby Starbucks. And I called my mom and I was just like, Mom, before I called my mom, I want to say on my way to Starbucks, the recruiter at the staffing agency called me. She was just like, Simone, you did so well in the interview that they want to put you in their administrative staff pool. And basically what that means is that the hospital pulls from this administrative pool whenever they have vacancies that they need to fill right away within the hospital. And again, these are temporary positions. However, if you do a good job in the temp position after 6 months, they would hire you, so you would be a direct employee of the hospital. So after I spoke to the recruiter at the staffing agency and she told me like, it's a go, I'm gonna send you all the paperwork that you need to complete, then we're gonna give it a go with this position. I was just so excited. I was like, okay, well, at least I have one foot in. So I went to Starbucks and I called my mom. I was like, Mom, so I did the interview and they want to put me in their administrative pool and I'm so excited. Do you think I should wait and go on the second interview? And she was like, absolutely, that's the permanent position. You have to go. So I sat around and in my mind, I'm just like, oh my gosh, how am I gonna do this? First of all, the second interview, I had to go back to the same HR office. And I was just like, I hope it's not the same receptionist. I hope the same people aren't there. They're gonna be wondering like, why is this girl here for a second interview? Anyhow, I went in for my second interview, and again, this was the permanent position directly with the hospital. I interviewed with obviously a different recruiter because the first recruiter was a recruiter working with the staffing agency, and the second recruiter is a recruiter working directly with the hospital. And so I interviewed with the recruiter in HR. She was amazing. She gave me some tips and she gave me more information about the hospital. And at that time, President Obama was in New York City. She was just like, listen, this is the first step. So I'm gonna need you to go to another location to interview with some supervisors. And we have jitneys that travel in the city, going from one location to the other, just taking patients and employees from one location to the other. But because President Obama was in the city, she told me to take the subway. She said the subway is gonna be the quickest route for you to get uptown. I interviewed in Midtown and then they sent me uptown. And so I went uptown, nervous, prepared, excited, just so many emotions running through my mind. And I met with 2 supervisors, and I'm gonna say this was the longest interview for the day. The first interview was through the staffing agency. The second interview was in Midtown with an HR, talent acquisition specialist. And now the third interview with person 3 and 4 was the longest interview ever. Oh my gosh. Every time I thought I was done, they had like a clipboard, and on the clipboard were questions. So one person would ask me questions, take notes. The other one would ask me questions, take notes. And I'm just like, okay, we're at the end of the clipboard now. We have to be, and then they'll flip it over and start new questions. And it went on and on and on and on. All this while I'm keeping my energy up. I am still excited. And I just did what I had to do. At the end of this interview, I had a splitting headache. My day was so long. My day started so early, and it was just tiring. Oh my gosh. So at the end of the interview, they told me that they wanted me to sit outside. They're gonna discuss amongst each other, and then they were gonna get back to me. And I'm thinking, what does that mean? This interview is supposed to be over. Like, I'm ready to go home. Simone, I'm tired and I want to go home. Anywho, I want to say 5 to 10 minutes went by, and then one of them came outside to get me, and she was just like, we would like you to meet with our managers. And I'm just like, okay, this is not ending. There is more. And so she took me upstairs to meet with 2 managers, which were their managers. So at this point, I'm interviewing with persons 5 and 6. And they were great. I interviewed and I was just answering questions. I was just like, okay, Simone, we have to do this. We're gonna push through. So I did my best. I was still excited because with every step of the way, I just knew that it was just more encouraging, because if the recruiter in HR didn't like me, she wouldn't send me uptown to interview with these supervisors. And if they didn't like me, they wouldn't send me upstairs to interview with their managers. And so I answered questions, and they were like, okay, that's it. And I was just like, that's it? I was surprised because I was just comparing it to how long I interviewed with the supervisors before, which was very long. And then this one was so much shorter. So I was just like happy, relieved. I thanked them tremendously, and they were just like, thank you for coming in. You will hear from a recruiter in HR. And so I picked up my bag, shook their hands, thanked them, and went on my merry way home. I want to say when I went home, I was just like wiped out. I mean, I was so tired. At this point, I'm just gonna say that I'm sure the headache was still in full force. So I just went home and I slept. Thank God I had a lot of support at home to help me with the kids. My husband's very supportive, and so I went home and I crashed. I literally crashed. And one thing that I always do is at the end of an interview, the very same day, I always send a thank you note. Always. But this day I was just too tired. And so the next day I woke up trying to recover from my full day the day before. I sent a thank you email to the recruiter in HR directly with the hospital. And I want to say within a half an hour, she got back to me via email and said, we want to move forward with your application. We would like you to send us 5 references. And how they do it is that people don't just write references and send them in. There is a system that they use. I don't know what it looks like, but basically I gave her the name, email and telephone number and how I'm affiliated with these people, my references. I sent her that information, and then they send the request for reference to the different individuals. So I reached out to my 5 references right away to say, I need you to do a reference for me for this position at this hospital, and I need you to do it right away. Like, this is urgent, very important. And so by the end of the following day, all my references were in, and I was just like, okay, my work here is done. Whatever happens, happens. So in the meantime, I was like looking over the documents that I got from the staffing agency, because I needed to do like several clearances. I had to do like a background check. Getting into this hospital, there are several checkpoints that you have to go through in order to be cleared. And so I didn't know what was going to happen with the permanent position. So I started working on completing my application for the position through the staffing agency. And so I interviewed on one day. The next day I worked on submitting my references. And then I want to say the day after, I want to say everything took 3 or 4 days, but no more. I want to say it's 3, but if not 3, definitely 4 days. The recruiter at the hospital for the direct hire called me, and she said, we would like to offer you the position. I'm just like, what? Me? Simone, that's been applying for jobs at this institution for the past 6 or so years, probably more. You want to offer me a position? I mean, I didn't say all of that to the recruiter, but in my mind, that's exactly what I said. Oh my gosh. I could not believe it. I could not believe that I was being offered a permanent position. All my hard work had finally paid off. All of my hard work. And I had to do a little cleaning up in terms of following up with the recruiter at the staffing agency, and it was just really weird because she worked so hard to get me that position. From the day that I met her and interviewed with her at the staffing agency, she just saw so much value in me. She had so much confidence in me. She was just like, Simone, you're gonna get this. Like, she just went to bat for me, and I to this day appreciate it. And so I had to send her an email. It's so funny because when she sent me the documents that I needed to work on to process that application, she told me that she was going on vacation the next week. So when I actually reached out to her to tell her that I was no longer interested in the position through the staffing agency, she was on vacation. And I didn't go into detail. I'm sure she was wondering like why she was so excited. Why would she like not take this position? But I never heard back from her. And I understand this is her job. She got me a position and I never took it. I didn't want to just like not show up, not answer her email. So I did tell her that I was just going to move forward in another direction. And it's so funny because the other day, after many, many years of like not being on LinkedIn, I actually created a LinkedIn profile and I connected with her, and I was just like, I don't know if you remember me, but we worked together like several years ago and you got me a position at so-and-so hospital, and I didn't take it. And I didn't tell you at the time why I didn't take it, but it was because I got a full-time position directly with the hospital. But I thank you so much for everything that you did for me then. And she was like, oh, Simone, it's so great to hear from you. I get these emails and messages all the time. I'm just always happy to help and always happy to hear from people that, you know, I worked with in the past. So it was really nice to connect with her on LinkedIn. So fast track, this is September. I got my brand new position at my dream hospital. Again, this wasn't my dream position, but it was my dream workplace. It was my dream facility, institution, whatever you want to call it. It was my dream place to work. But it wasn't my dream job because, again, I was new to the field of healthcare and I basically had to start over. Starting a career in healthcare, again, I felt like I had a lot of transferable skills that I could apply to my new position, my new role there, but I had to start over. I had to build anew. I had to build afresh. And I got an entry-level position. I was willing to work my way up. And again, this was September 2015. And basically, and it was at the end of September. So my first day back to my position volunteering at New York Presbyterian, I told the person that was essentially my supervisor that I got a full-time position and that I wanted to kind of spend the rest of time at home with my baby. At this point, I was there for several months because, again, I started in May. And so this was October. So I told her and she totally understood. And she also knew that I was looking for a full-time position. So she totally understood. I was just like, I just want to spend the rest of time with my babies because I'm gonna be going back to working full-time very soon. So I got to spend all of October, I want to say most of October, home with my little boys. And then November 2nd came around and that was my first day of work. I think about that day and I think about my journey to that point, and I think about how my life has changed since that day. Working at this institution has absolutely been a blessing to me, to my family, just like an absolute blessing to my life. And I want to stress, education can change the trajectory of your life in such a dramatic way. I know everyone isn't a fan of beating the books. Everyone isn't a fan of going to school. And there are so many successful people that are able to do it without a degree. A lot of people are out there doing trades and they're successful and they're making so much money. And it's not for everyone, but for me, it changed my entire life. I am gonna follow up with a video to give you some tips on how to change careers, because there were some essential things that I did to kind of facilitate this change in career paths. So thank you so much for stopping by. Thank you for joining me. Again, if you are new here, please take a moment to subscribe to my channel. I would greatly, greatly, greatly appreciate it. Take care until next time. Bye.
Baby, we should be closer than friends. If you OPN, engaging you's on my agenda. Request my chariot to get ya.